They say the worst thing you can do when you're standing at the edge of something, a cliff, a rooftop, a dark pit, is look down. Not because you'll fall, but because sometimes something looks back. Claire Marsh had lived in Ridgemont, Ohio her whole life, 34 years in the same town, the last 3 in the house her mother left her, a 2-bedroom ranch on the edge of the old Tillman property, where the land dipped and the soil had always been soft. She worked nights at the county hospital, slept days, and spent her evenings doing what she'd always done since she was a girl, watching the backyard. It was a habit she'd picked up from her mother, who used to say the backyard had a personality, that it changed when you weren't watching. Um, Claire had always thought that was just grief talking. Her mother had lost too many things, invented too many explanations. But lately, Claire had started to think her mother wasn't entirely wrong. It appeared on a Wednesday in March. She'd gone to bed at 6 in the morning after a 12-hour shift. And when she woke at 2 in the afternoon and looked out the back window as she always did, it was there, a hole, perfectly round, roughly 10 feet across, sitting in the center of her backyard, as though it had always been there. And she'd simply never noticed. She called the city. A crew came out Thursday morning, 2 men in orange vests who walked around the hole with measuring tape and clipboards and the particular expression of people who have a policy for every situation except this one. They measured it. They photographed it. They dropped a weighted line into it. The line ran out at 50 feet and hadn't hit bottom. One of the men told her they'd be back Friday to assess structural risk. He said it casually, the way you say, you'll be back to fix a leaky faucet. He didn't come back Friday. Neither of them did. She called the city again. They had no record of her complaint. Her neighbor, Dale Pruitt, came over Saturday evening. He was 71, a retired machinist, not a man given to dramatics. He stood at the chain-link fence between their yards and looked at the hole for a long time without speaking. My dog won't go near it, he said finally. Been whining since Wednesday night, won't eat. He paused. The Tillman boy, back in '89, he had one, same place, same size, same perfect circle. They filled it in with concrete, 60 tons. Another pause. It was back in 3 days. Empty lot now. Nobody builds on it. Claire asked him what happened to the Tillman boy. Dale looked at her for a long moment. Then he said, he looked down into it one night. After that, he wasn't quite right. Kept saying something, was still looking back up. He let go of the fence. Sell the house, Claire. Don't wait. She heard it for the first time on Sunday night. A sound, not loud, not dramatic, nothing like the horror movies she used to watch as a teenager. It was subtle, rhythmic, like breathing, but stretched out. One long inhale over maybe 15 seconds, then silence, then a slow exhale that seemed to make the floorboards vibrate at a frequency just below hearing. She told herself it was the pipes. She told herself it was the house settling. She told herself that on Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, on Wednesday night, exactly 1 week after the hole had appeared, she stopped telling herself anything and just lay in the dark and listened. And the sound was closer, not louder, a closer, as though whatever was making it had risen slowly through 50 feet of dark earth. On Thursday morning, she packed a bag. She was going to leave. She had her keys in her hand, her bag over her shoulder, her hand on the front door. Then her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered it. There was breathing on the line, the same rhythm, the same long, slow intervals, and then a voice, low and wrong, like a voice that had learned to be a voice from listening to other voices, said her name. She didn't remember walking outside. She didn't remember dropping her keys or her bag or her phone. She was just suddenly there at the edge of the hole looking down. Later, she would try to explain it as compulsion, as sleepwalking, as a reaction to stress. But in the moment, standing at that edge in the cold night air, it didn't feel like any of those things. It felt like an answer. Like she had been asking a question without words for 34 years, and the hole was finally, patiently providing the response. She looked down. The hole was perfectly dark. No bottom visible, no reflected moonlight, no sense of depth or dimension, just black, absolute and total. She stared into it for what felt like a very long time, and then slowly, something in the darkness below shifted, not moved, shifted. The way darkness shifts when something inside it changes position. And she saw it. Two pale points of light, far below, spaced apart the way eyes are spaced. Still at first, then slowly, deliberately, they moved upward. She ran back across the yard, onto the porch, through the back door, which she locked and deadbolted, and then stood against, breathing. She called Dale Pruitt, no answer. She called 911. The operator was patient, professional, and completely unable to help. She asked Claire if she was in immediate physical danger. Claire said she didn't know. The operator sent a patrol car. The officer walked around the yard, shone his flashlight into the hole, and told her it looked like a sinkhole. He recommended she call the city. She didn't sleep. She sat in the kitchen with every light on and waited for morning. At 6 a.m., she looked out the window. The hole was still there, and the grass around it, in a perfect ring, 3 feet wide, had turned black overnight. Dale Pruitt came over at 8. He looked at the blackened ring around the hole and nodded slowly, as though he'd expected it. He told her to come inside. He made coffee. He sat across from her at the kitchen table and told her what he actually knew. Not the edited version from Saturday, but everything. The hole had appeared 4 times in recorded memory in Richmond, always on or near the old Tillman land, always perfectly round, always bottomless. The Tillman boy in 1989 had lasted 3 weeks before his family moved him to a facility in Columbus. A woman named Berta Coles in 1971 had filled it with cement and moved to Florida. A family in 1958 simply left everything, just drove away one morning and never came back. And in 1943, a man named Harold Voss had not run, had not moved, had stood at the edge of his backyard hole every night for a month. By the end of that month, his neighbors said he had stopped speaking. He would stand in his yard during the day and look at the ground. Just look at the ground, waiting. What happened to him? Claire asked. Dale wrapped both hands around his coffee mug. Nobody knows. He was there one morning, gone the next, just gone. No body, no note. The hole was filled in by the city that same week. He looked at her. The city has no record of doing it. Claire packed properly this time. 2 bags, important documents, her mother's jewelry. She was going to drive to her cousin's place in Cincinnati and figure out the rest later. She had her bags in the car. She was in the driver's seat with the engine running. She was going to leave. She looked in the rear view mirror. She could see the backyard through the gap in the fence. She could see the hole, and she could see that something was coming out of it, slowly, deliberately, the way you climb stairs when you're not in any hurry because you already know where the stairs lead. It was tall, wrong proportioned in ways she couldn't fully process in the dark. Limbs too long, the angle of the neck not quite matching any geometry she knew. It stood over at the edge of the hole and turned its head toward the car, toward the rearview mirror, toward her eyes in the rearview mirror, and it went still. It had been waiting for her to look. That was all it had ever wanted, not to chase, not to grab or hurt or take, not yet, just to be seen, to complete the circuit. She understood in that moment why Harold Voss had stopped speaking, why he'd spent his last days staring at the ground. He hadn't been waiting for the hole. He'd been trying not to look up because he knew once you've seen it, it doesn't go away. It follows your eyes wherever they go, in windows, in mirrors, in still water, in the dark behind your eyelids when you try to sleep. Claire Marsh left Ridgemont the next morning. She is living in Cincinnati now. She keeps her curtains closed. She doesn't look in mirrors after dark. She sold the house in May to a young couple from Columbus who got a very good deal and asked very few questions. The city filled in the hole the following week. They have no record of doing it. Dale Pruitt's house is for sale. He won't say why he's moving. The couple from Columbus calls Claire sometimes. She doesn't answer, but she can see from the missed call notifications that they've started calling at 2 and 3 in the morning. She tells herself she'll call them back, warn them. She picks up the phone every few days and stares at their number and thinks about what she would say and how she would say it and whether they will believe her. And then she puts the phone down because she knows what would happen if she called. They would ask her to describe what she saw, and she would have to look up from the phone and look into a mirror to think about it. And somewhere far away in a yard in Ridgemont, Ohio, the ground would shift and something would smile.